Good evening. This is Donna Blomquist, librarian at the LaSalle Public Library. Welcome to tonight's program with author, former journalist, attorney, lecturer, and a frequent presenter at the LaSalle Public Library, Claire Evans. Before we begin, just a few reminders. On Tuesday, August 29th at 6 p.m. Central Time, the library will virtually host music historian Gary Wenstrup with his presentation on the history and music of the Beach Boys. And on Tuesday, September 5th at 6 p.m. Central, the library will virtually host radio enthusiast and author Steve Darnell for a presentation about Chicago and the golden age of radio. And on Tuesday, September 12th at 6 p.m. Central, the library will virtually host historians from A Tour of Her Own who will present Hookers, Healers, and Heroines, featuring figures that include Elizabeth Keckley, Belva Lockwood, Dr. Mary Walker, Clara Barton, Charlotte Grimke, and the Treasury Girls scandal, all set in the times of the American Civil War. All library programming is free and open to the public. It is also shareable, so please feel free to pass the information on to others. And as always, we have a short survey at the end. We'd really appreciate it if you would complete it. And now for tonight's program, we welcome Claire Evans for a preview of her new book, High Tea and the Lowdown, An American's Unfiltered Life in the UK. Mark your calendar, being released August 31st. Claire, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So yes, the big day is ticking down. So not a Brit, you say. Yeah, I'll explain. Once upon a time, I married a Brit. And I'd gone to study abroad in law school, and I'd watched Britcoms until the cows came home. So I felt well prepared. But then within 6 months of us getting married, we needed to go to the UK because his job needed him back. And I kind of knew this was coming. You know, he had talked about this. And it wasn't totally out of the realm because, you know, as I say on the back of the book cover, who wouldn't want to go to the land wherein of enchanted cottages where women with dewy complexions stir jam? You know, that's kind of what I thought. Regency bonnets, anyone? You know, let's run around in Empire Wastelands. So I had quite the learning curve. I got some kind of wacky advice from the expats who were going to, you know, show me the way. They'd been before. The biggest, wackiest advice was bring a lifetime supply of taco seasoning. And that was said with all honesty. Yeah, so that's what I had to deal with. And I have a very level-headed spouse. His name is Ben. He factors heavily in this book. It's called High Tea and the Lowdown. So I wrote this memoir. And, you know, 10 years out, I can look back on this life, and it was a fun life. And I was really grateful that I got to do it. Now, it wasn't without its glitches and falling in some serious potholes. So that's the theme of this evening. So the arc of the book is that, believe it or not, in order to stay in the UK, I had to take a test. I had a limited time to take something called the Life in the UK test. This was a real deal. So what I really spent my time doing, other than stressing out, because if I didn't pass this test, they could say no more visa, bye-bye. So we'd have a serious commuter marriage for sure. So I was gathering nuggets the whole time. I thought, I'm a perpetual student. I need to learn all this culture stuff. And this book is about my journey in learning, and sometimes very difficult learning and finding things out the hard way. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you tonight is information gotten the hard way because I have made these mistakes, or other people, I've seen these mistakes made. It's in language because I was really unafraid going to the UK. They speak English. Oh, ho, ho. You know, they speak a totally different brand of English, and the way the pronunciations go, this can be very daunting. So if you watch Britcoms, if you read British novels, anything like that, hopefully some of this will come in handy in your entertainment life. So let me begin. I'll show you the book cover, and I'll talk a little bit about what are we doing here. There it is, high tea and the lowdown. So why am I Claire Craig Evans, you may ask, because historically I am just Claire Evans, and this is true. There is a reason. I am not the Claire Evans who wrote the Three Little Super Pigs. This is the reason. There are quite a few Claire Evanses in the authoring world, so I have to be Claire Craig Evans. So I'll tell you a bit more about this test. So I'd read about this infamous Life in the UK test. This is a really controversial piece of the immigration puzzle that was required for citizenship. So starting in 2007, I couldn't apply for a long-term spouse visa without passing that exam. And my provisional spouse visa is only good for 2 years and 9 months, and that's it. But the thought of getting deported, was never far from my mind. And this test was going to cover these really wide-ranging subjects, UK culture and history. It had a 70% pass rate, which, by the way, was comparable to the Illinois bar exam. And I was kind of afraid of that, too. So worse, I'd read, an entire news desk, their staff at the New Statesman, this is a UK political magazine, had taken the test as an experiment and failed. And they're from there. So critics from all sides, they wrote all these heaps of complaints in the press, and you can't test for Britishness, and these history facts are superficial and plain wrong, and it was sexist in its lines of questioning. But, the mere fact that British people complain isn't a slam dunk that anything is truly wrong. That's known as whinging in the UK. Whinging is the term. Whinging is a national right and a pastime. So I would need to spend my time there coming up to speed, pricking up these little breadcrumbs of knowledge. And this is what I have to share with you in part tonight. Well, let's begin with the obvious tourist pitfalls. If you are an American, here's what I suggest. The word pants is not your friend. In fact, just take it right out of your vocabulary on the plane. Make a note. Don't say pants. Here's why. It's not obscene. You should know this, but it's really easy to be embarrassed. So at this point, I will share the story from the book of an acquaintance, the first day of study abroad. So I got this lesson taught to me in a very public way by someone else, thankfully. We're on the tube to set the scene. Frank from Ohio was a gregarious young Italian-American student with uncontrolled volume and temperature. He regretted his jeans decision and blasted it to everyone on the train. Man, the minute I get home, I have got to change out of these pants. Thanks to my years of Britcom viewing, I recognized his transatlantic language bomb. I covered my face with my hands and peeked through my fingers for the emergency exit. The usually unflappable locals flashed wry smiles and lowered their papers to take in the person who had said, in Britspeak, that for unknown and best undisclosed reasons, he required a fresh pair of underwear. Yes. Pants, by the way, can also mean something awful. And by that, to give you an example, I tried the generic tea at the grocery store, but it was pants. That is an expression too. So you see, yeah, that one's just better left there on the table. Next. Now here's something truly obscene in the category. Oh dear, do not use the term fanny pack. I beg you. It is obscene. So how, you may ask? Let's skirt around the issue because this is a rated G talk. Fanny is, I see it pains me to say it because I know what it means in Britspeak. It's an impolite term for a part of the female anatomy. Google can provide you with more details on that. Some Brits would be offended, but most are not. Most find this very funny because this is their sense of humor. They will be amused by it. So see, I've left it very nebulous. So here's some time to either admire a beautiful picture of a castle, your choice, or Google, what does it mean? Oh, wait. Oh my, did you get there? I have a feeling you did. Those phones come in handy. So where does that leave us? What is this thing called? And can I wear one? Yes, you can. They call it a bum bag, or you could also find it under the names waist pouch or belt wallet. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we have to be kind of equal opportunity. And I turn to my husband on this one, Ben, because Ben has always had a delightful time thinking about the whole concept of Groundhog Day. It's very American. You know, they don't have groundhogs in the UK. They have some relatives, but not groundhogs. Particularly what's happening on February 2nd in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and the locales involved. This is Gobbler's Knob. Oh, knob is problematic, shall we say. There's a lot of knobs in Punxsutawney. And if I told you that knob is the corollary to the term that you likely just Googled on the male anatomy, now you know why he is so bemused by Gobbler's Knob's information booth, or Knob's Got Talent, Knob Buses, Knob Stops, or Meet Us at the Knob on February 2nd. So a little something to look out for. The other thing that gets him, and this is useful for Americans, there's an old ocean spray campaign of years ago where two men stand in a cranberry, we'll call it a bog, and they say, ocean spray, straight from the bog. And he cracks up. And at first I did not know why. Why? In Brit speak, the bog is the toilet. So he has zero interest in ocean spray. Cranberries are quite American, but if they're straight from the bog in particular. Okay, so that's out of the way. Let's discuss a bit more toilet terminology. This comes in handy because these are things you must know as a tourist. If you're told someone needs to spend a penny, it's not literal. It's a cutesy kind of a way to mean that you need to go to the bathroom. And the bathroom can also be known as the loo. Also, for your information, the toilet is not only a thing, it is a place. So the Brits frequently say, I need to go to the toilet. And it does not mean the actual piece of porcelain. It means the room it is in. So in Victorian times, public toilets for women actually charged money. And some public toilets still do. So I always say to Americans, carry a couple of 20p coins in your pocket if you're out in the city center shopping areas. You just never know. You might need them if they're on pay toilets still. In fact, Harrods department store in London, which is a very Tony swanky department store, used to have the most expensive pay toilets in Europe. And back when I was a study abroad student, I personally paid £1, which was the equivalent of $1.50 to visit their public restroom. It was very nice. Now I've been researching this and I see since they have done away with that policy. But you should also know the Brits sometimes Twitter when they hear Americans say restroom. Do we rest in the room? Is there a chaise lounge that we spread out on? This is what they're interested in. So you should also know, because my goal is to make you fully informed, that loo is not limited to the toilet. It is a place. There is a place called Looe, Looe, and you can find it. It is beautiful in Cornwall, which is the farthest southwest county in England. You see it there on the map. Well worth visiting the Looe, either way. So let's move on. Money, because when you're in the UK, you'll need to spend some money. There's a lot of nicknames for this. Quid are nicknames for pounds. Bob also means pounds. A fiver. So a fiver is a £5 note. They don't say bill, they say note. And then a tenner would be a £10 note. If you've got dosh, you've got cash. And then their cute word for loose change in your pocket is shrapnel. Note, if you're into Jane Austen, she appears on a tenner, a £10 note. So speaking of that, I always thought that there was a Broadway and West End play called Lend Me a Tenner. It has two meanings. It can mean the singer, or if someone says, lend me a tenner, they could want £10 in their hand. So now you know, you have to figure out by context, which is it. I've told this story before, but I'm going to recap. Concessions in the UK means a reduced ticket price for something. It's more like a senior discount or student discount. It does not mean snacks or drinks for sale. And yeah, I figured that out the hard way because I was in line at a stately home. It was Althorpe, where Diana's buried. And a very aged volunteer I asked them because I'm starving, it's lunchtime, may I ask you about concessions? And I was told they are not for you. Oh, and see, I thought, how dare you deny me a sausage roll? Do I just look like I shouldn't have one? Can you tell Weight Watchers is after me or what? So no, I had to get the explanation after the day had gone by and Ben is home from work. This is the punchline of quite a bit of my UK life. Once Ben arrived home from work and explained what had happened to me that day. So we're going to move on into motoring. And you'll see why in just a second. I warn Americans off driving. Have a look. So this is a very actually easy roundabout. So here's what to think of. You're driving on the left. In fact, my husband, Ben, and I have this chant when we get off these big transatlantic flights. We forget where we are. And we can easily, in our sleep-deprived state, start to drift to the right because we're used to American roads. So we sing, driving on the left today, driving on the left today. We have to. Well, so look at that little red car and how it is circling around. That's the roundabout. I was very daunted by the driving test, and the book has the entire story of my driving test experience. So when I took it, the driving test in our city had a 47% pass rate. That's it. Oh no. So that was actually high. Some areas had a much lower pass rate than that. Problematic turns, turn right, straight over, anti-clockwise. So when I first heard that, I thought, are they against timepieces? Anti-clockwise? So no. It's just the opposite direction. So think of that. Think of being in the left lane. And I'll read you out of the book about when Ben tried to be my driving instructor. We are married. We stayed married, so the punchline is, but barely. I did not have fond memories of our early exchanges in Ben's School of Driving. So here's the dialogue. Me, driving around a roundabout. Look, kids, Big Ben. I hear the sound of crickets chirping. Apparently, he had never seen the fine feature film, National Lampoon's European Vacation, where the notoriously goofy Clark Griswold urges his kids to admire the scenery because he can't figure out how to drive the family car out of a roundabout in central London. Ben, pay attention. Me, how do I get off this thing? Ben, turn right. Me, panicked, right? How do you expect me to do that? It's a series of lefts. Ben, I want you to go straight over the next roundabout. Me, how? This car doesn't have four-wheel drive like my old Jeep did. Ben, what are you talking about? Me, you don't want me to drive through the grass, do you? I edge straight forward through the impatiens in the middle of the circle artfully planted by the local Women's Institute. Ben, no, frantically stomping an invisible brake pedal. Go around. Take the opposite exit. I had no idea in so many ways. Nothing I could do was right because it was all left. In a roundabout, turn right meant to take the exit at 3 o'clock. Go straight over meant to take the exit exactly opposite you. Most importantly, the quickest way to change Ben's usually pleasant demeanor was to put him in fear for his life. My lessons on how to pass the driving test were booked to start the next week. It was much cheaper than marriage therapy. Amen. So this is why I advise people visiting, especially first timers, resist the urge to hire a car, to rent a car. There is more to it than meets the eye. Something else that always puzzled me for quite a while until I said the words out loud. This mysterious message. They're riding on the roads there, and I saw this message called Maurice. This was in the south of England. They are close to France. I thought to myself, is it pronounced Moise? Maurice? And one day I just said it. What is Maurice? And everyone in the car grew silent. They didn't know what I was talking about. And this happened a lot. So I pointed. It's on the road. Maurice. Well, my American eyes are trained to look right when I should have been looking left in the lane. And I'm reading what's upside down in the oncoming lane? Slow. Oh. So yes, there are messages written on the road, but on the left. Good to know. Well, there's some interesting terms for the car pieces. There's the boot. The boot is the trunk. And there's the bonnet, which is the hood. Also, you should know, the boot can also mean athletic shoes worn in particular sports, namely cricket and football. That is soccer to Americans. There is a show that is since concluded on Apple TV called Ted Lasso, and my husband and I just love it. And it's about a displaced Kansas American football coach who's been transplanted into the middle of London. Sounds familiar. And him trying to have culture grip, getting used to what's happening. He realizes these terms one day and he says, so if I were to get fired from my job where I'm putting cleats in the trunk of my car, I got the boot from putting boots in the boot. And he's exactly right. You can totally get the boot from that. So we're going to move on to food and drink. So here are some of the more non-translatable, shall we say, food items I found on menus. Lots of French. Go figure. So for as much as the stereotype goes that the British dislike the French, there's a lot of French in British English. Courgette is zucchini. Aubergine is eggplant. That also goes for the color. And funny though, if you see what we would call as Americans a fillet of beef on a menu, they would call it a fillet. Don't know, they just do. But biscuits are cookies. So there's a bit of French. That cookie is a Dutch word that got into American English and has since kind of been adopted as an infiltrator bit of English into British English because of the American influence. So a lot of people in Britain would know what you meant if you said you wanted a cookie. However, if you take the biscuit in Brit speak, you've just taken the cake in America. So keep your baked items separate there, separate but equal, probably. Also, what appears on hamburgers? Well, that can be interesting too. A bun, Americans would call it, goes by lots of names. I usually would hear it as a bap, sometimes a bread roll. But the BBC said there was a study conducted by the University of Manchester that identified 7 terms used around the UK for the generic bread roll, mostly found in Northern England, or in the case of the bap, in Scotland. Other variations are batch, which usually turns up in Coventry and Liverpool, the Lancashire barm, and the West Yorkshire tea cake. Oldham got in on the action with muffin, and bun and cob are more generally used in the Northeast England and Midlands. So things can go by lots of names. And then the middle was a dessert, a pudding, that I always got a kick out of, a fool. When you see that on the menu, who wouldn't want to order the fool? Usually raspberry, sometimes gooseberry. What is it? It's fruit that's been mashed up and put into cream and custard, or custard, either or. Funny enough, though, last summer, our tour guide in Yorkshire, when I was researching the Harriet talk, told me that he loved it when a good plan came together. And I said, Mr. T, this is a reference from the A-Team. He said, you know it? I thought, of course I know it. But do you know it? He knew it. So this tells us that the Brits recognize the A-Team. And you could say, I pity the fool. And that is their sense of humor. You could pity the person or the dessert, either or. Tea, not the drink. There is something else. Tea can be another name for your evening meal. Oh, well, I used to have, this is in the book, an old Scottish neighbor. I tried to befriend her. This was in vain. She was quite old and quite well smoked. She told me that she couldn't join me for a cup of tea at 4 o'clock because my tea's in the oven. And I thought to myself, do you use your oven to warm up your beverages? Why? So I let that go because she shoved me out the door. And then when Ben came home, punchline, he said, oh no, that's the evening meal. So now I knew. And now you do too. Then one day he announced that at work, suddenly everything has gone pear-shaped. and I had no idea. I pictured all the men, largely men work with men, in his building rushing to one side and completely skewing what the shape of the demographic was or how many people in the building. No, that is lingo for it's all gone very wrong. So if something goes pear-shaped for a Brit, it is not good. They do not rush to one side of the building. Food and drink continued. A fun adjective, scrummy. So something's scrummy, that's a contraction of scrumptious and yummy. And what it means is delicious. However, I have seen scrummy used to describe babies, body products, lotions, potions, and torsos. And namely, that last one was in the case of the Daily Mail, which is kind of a lowbrow English newspaper, was sponsoring the UK's Scrummiest Torso contest. Okay. And then to add to your confusion, in rugby, there is something called the scrum. So this is a formation that you see where packs of these players come together. They start to play that way. So question, here we go again. Are there scrummy torsos in the scrum? Most likely, yes. But there you go. So here's a bit of knowledge that was on, this stuff was on the Life in the UK test. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of this was. Nicknames for people, in particular British regions. So here we are. There's the map. Manx, heard that term? The Manx are from the Isle of Man, which you see, it's the island that straddles, it's right between Ireland and the UK, or the Great Britain, the island. Mancunians are the people that live in Manchester, and they're not Manchesterites. That would be totally wrong. It comes from the Roman name for that city, Mancunian. Scousers come from Liverpool. Geordies are from Newcastle. That is a particularly challenging accent. Well, frankly, so are Scousers, Beatles in their fine form, if you think, can you ever understand what Ringo was saying? Brummies are from Birmingham. And then the Cockneys are from East London. And so a little bit of fun fact, particularly I'm a cat person, so I'll tell you about the Isle of Man. Have you heard of the Manx Cat? So anything Manx, Manx is the adjective that's used to describe anything from the Isle of Man. And there is a particular breed of cat called the Manx. They are tailless. They have absolutely no tail. Now, some that are half Manx, half not, might have a rump of a little tail, but the true Manx do not. The Manx cat is on their currency, the Isle of Man's currency. So the Manx were actually a Celtic tribe, still are, living on this island. And Isle of Man's currency you can spend there, but mainland, not mainland, but Great Britain, the island to the east, doesn't accept Isle of Man's currency. So if you want one of these cat coins, you better be prepared to either keep it or spend it there. But when we get into other famous places, we get to Cockneys. So this is probably one of the most widespread, widely known nicknames for where are you from. So to be a Cockney, by definition, if you want to go by the book, you have to have been born within the sound of a particular church bell, St. Mary Le Bow, East London. These are Eastenders, in other words. So this particular part of the East End of London, this is a very, very working class accent. It can be hard to understand. Once you've tuned your ear to it, it gets a little easier. But now, actually, they say it's harder to be, in the sound of the bells because the city is so big and noisy that no one can hear them. They are much drowned out from when this would have begun years and years ago in the 1800s. Well, probably the most famous Cockney, at least for Americans, is Michael Caine. There's a joke, well placed, that he at a party was regarded as a drug dealer by the hostess because people kept pronouncing his name Michael Caine. Michael Caine. And she asked, "What's with people asking for Michael Caine?" Well, now you'll know. How are they pronouncing his name? How would he pronounce his name? There's some certain isms, parts of this accent that are particular. Some of the fun ones, if you watch the soap called EastEnders that BBC America used to run, I think they still do, you can, if you can understand it and get your ear tuned to it, you can hear it. They're very, very authentic. Well, there's the infamous glottal stop. They are not pronouncing T's with a T. Now, we are ones to talk because in North America, if we have a T that's straddled by two vowels, we pronounce that as a D. B-U-T-T-E-R is butter. No, no. Here's how it sounds if you're a Cockney.
I like butter.
Butter. That's it. Then the TH sounds can become V's and F's, depending on the words. And so listen for how he's saying brother. He's going to slur it together. Brother is, he's going to say brothers, but you can hear it anyway.
My brother is something else.
Brother. Then L's. So L's on the sound of a word become a W sound, like the man's name Phil, suddenly Phil. I need to take my evening pill. And then certain TH sounds are going to become F sounds. In the case of the number, this is free. Free, thanks, thanks a million. And then in the middle of a word, another, enough-a. Okay, so you have that going for you.
Butter.
He likes butter. Yeah, we've heard that.
My brother is something else.
Isn't he? So the best example I could find is the movie Alfie. So this is Michael Caine's unadulterated accent. This is how he naturally sounds. So there's a bit of translation in here. He's going to refer to birds. He means women. And he's going to refer to Bob, and he means money or a pound. Okay, so this is how it sounds in life.
You know what? When I look back on my little life and the birds I've known, and think of all the things they've done for me and the little I've done for them, you'd think I'd had the best of it all along the line. But what have I got out of it? I got a bob or two, some decent clothes, a car. I got my health back, and I ain't attached. But I ain't got me peace of mind. And if you ain't got that, you ain't got nothing. I don't know. It seems to me, if they ain't got you one way, they got you another. So what's the answer? That's what I keep asking myself. What's it all about?
Hard to believe that's what he sounds like in nature, in the wild. But he's changed it a little bit. It is best, I think, that I let him explain it and why he sounds the way he does, because he's been asked this before. So here's the answer.
I think the first movie that Americans saw you in and recognized you in and was Alfie.
Yes.
And it was remarkable for the movie, but also for Alfie's Cockneyness. This is, I think, the first time that we had seen this in America. And I'm curious that you, the Cockney is your natural...
Cockney is my natural dialect, yeah, I am a Cockney, yes. I mean, this isn't it. This is just a general London accent. If I spoke Cockney, you wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about.
But it interests me that among the other great actors of your generation, say Roger Moore and Connery to an extent, O'Toole, they all kind of adapted, a kind of a more posh accent. You have stuck with this.
Yeah, that was deliberate on my part. I was always very aware of the class in system in England, and so when I became a success, I sort of shoved it down their throat and continued to talk like I did, because it was to encourage other people from working class backgrounds to say that they could do it, because it's very difficult to explain to an American a social system where you have to remember, when I grew up, every actor talked posh. All plays and movies were about middle class or upper class things. It was all bunties having a party, let's go up to London, and everyone was in tennis shorts and rackets. And I came to a place where everybody was getting beaten to death by gangsters and there was crap everywhere, and so it was, you never thought of being an actor because you didn't, first of all, you didn't talk properly. Everybody said that to me. You know, you didn't talk properly. But I kept the accent in the hope that it would sort of break down the class barrier and say to young people like myself, you can do it. You don't have to be an actor. Anything you can do. It doesn't matter how you speak.
So on top of the how you say it, there's what you say if you're a Cockney, and that's a whole other ball of wax. There's something called Cockney rhyming slang. This is invented language. These are almost like codes that people from the East End use. Now it's kind of dying out. The young people don't know so many of these as they used to, but even Ben will use a butcher's. And at the first time we were at Gatwick and we're waiting on a flight, and he says, I'm going to go have a butcher's at the boards over there. Well, so what is this stuff? Cockney rhyming slang is rhyming the word that you want with a phrase, and using that phrase to stand in. So a butcher's stands for a butcher's hook, which rhymes with a look. So I'm going to have a look at the boards. Yeah. You just have to know this stuff. So if ever he's having a butcher's at something, that doesn't mean that he's gone to have a ham sandwich, which is kind of what I thought. Here's how an Eastender would say it.
Kiss a butcher's at that then, will ya?
Yeah. And there's more, but wait, there's all sorts. So here's just a kind of a little sprinkling. Sometimes they'll actually take off the full phrase and just stand in part of it, the first part. So the apples and pears are the stairs. I'm going up the apples, they'd say. Oh, then brown bread means dead. If I catch him, he's brown bread. Aseptic. No, I haven't ever heard this one in life, thankfully. Maybe I've just been lucky, or I didn't know what I was listening to at the time. Aseptic is short for septic tank, which is a Yank. Not a very nice description of Americans. She's a septic from Chicago. If you're having a giraffe, you're having a laugh at something. You're having a giraffe if you think that's a deal. Porkies. Don't tell me porkies. Porkies is short for porky pies, which rhymes with lies. So don't tell me lies. And then cream crackered stands in the place of knackered. Knackered means you're really, really tired. So after that flight, I was cream crackered, and it goes on and on. There's all sorts of these slangs. You just basically have to find yourself a list and read them through and see if you can commit some of them to memory. So having said that.
Kiss a butcher's at that then, will ya?
Yeah, a butcher's. Next, we'll move on to what I like to call awesome words and phrases. Now, awesome is a very American word. They don't really use it very much in the UK, and it's kind of retained its meaning there, meaning awe-inspiring, like godly in its proportions. Where here it just means, yeah, fine, awesome. Well, just like some films have depicted, sometimes I get asked, had they ever asked me unnecessary questions just to hear my conspicuous American accent? Because awesome gives that away. It's a very, that sound is a very American sound. It certainly happened to Ben in the States. This is from the book. Some Americans were more interested in admiring the way he was talking than what he was actually saying. In Britain, I felt more like a novelty act. I was buying a box of tissues at a chemist, that's a drugstore, near Piccadilly Circus, when the teenage clerk slipped me a note and asked me to pronounce what it said. Awesome. Had I lost something in translation, she succumbed to a fit of giggles. Awesome, awesome, she chanted. It didn't feel so good to be mocked, but I was charitable, and I took my leave without a word. I was sure she needed a jolly in between pointing people to the hemorrhoid suppositories. True. And the flip side of that coin is that when Ben was traveling in the States with a group, he ordered his dinner in an American restaurant just once. And the waitress returned with the entire female wait staff and asked him to recite his order again. Swoon. So not quite the same experience as I had. So these are some fun ways, expressions that are particularly British. Bob's your uncle. Totally confusing. The first time I heard this, I'm quite literal. A lot of Americans are. Bob's my brother. Actually, my brother is Robert. He goes by Bob. I corrected that person. No, actually, he's my brother. And they thought I was joking. No. What it means is, and there you go. You're all set. The solution is easy. And Bob's your uncle. You're done. Well, then they twist it in a funny kind of witty way. They might say, Robert's your father's brother. See what they've done there? And in that case, that's also a no. My father's brother was Glenn. And so I corrected that person too. My great-grandfather was Robert. This is a total mess. What apparently this comes from is a prime minister named Robert who appointed his nephew into the inner realm of Parliament. And because that was such an easy job, to get for that young person, it entered the language. And that's what happens if Bob's your uncle. The solution is easy. So that's kind of an urban legend. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Well, I always got a little kick out of the English scheme, a scheme. And to us, Americans, that means like, it's something evil, conniving. No, to them, it's just a plan of any sort. But usually the government's involved. The government has a lot of schemes. Now, you can read into that what you like, but I just wanted to show you an example. This is His Majesty's government, the page for people who'd like to buy a house. What scheme is right for you? All schemes. Select the scheme you'd like to compare. So that's how they're using that word. Other fun words. Ta. That doesn't mean goodbye. It means thanks. Ta. Thanks. Not goodbye as in ta-ta, they would say, that is goodbye, or we would say ta-ta, kind of sing-songy. No, ta. Ta by itself is just goodbye. If you're chuffed about something, you're very pleased. So I was really chuffed when I passed that driving test. True. And another fun one, to faff around. Is to mess around with something. Quit faffing around. I don't know why I like that one. I just do. I got very scared when someone told me once they directed me to the surgery with my problem. Well, what I was lacking is context. There's two terms. The doctor's surgery is the doctor's office. So I need to attend surgery. That is not to say I want to look at an operation. No. I need to go to the doctor's office. That's how that would be translated. But they also use the term surgery to mean an operation. So you kind of have to know, what are you referring to? So not terribly long ago, I got a bit caught out, they would say, with this one. This term, Ben likes to use it, a Johnny No Stars. So a Johnny No Stars is a slang term for usually a young man, not super smart, that's usually a newbie at a burger restaurant, because American chains used to put stars on their badges to tell you how long they've been in service there. So no stars, no training. I happened to say to Ben that I don't want to feel lonely like a Johnny No Stars. And he said, no. The expression you want is Billy No Mates. And he was right. So Billy No Mates is a slang for somebody with no friends. So I got those two confused. By the way, sometimes this comes up. If you hear someone being called, or you're called a Muppet, it's not because you are cute or cuddly. This is an insult. It's slang for an idiot. He's a real Muppet. Not a great thing to be called. And we're going to circle back for a little bit. This is a term you'd find in the East End, but broadly, it's kind of gone throughout the working class accents of the UK. In it. I never use this term. I don't belong to that demographic. So I found it very disingenuous to try to use it, but I am amused by it. So it's kind of, on its surface, it's a contraction of isn't it? Sometimes it stands in for doesn't it? But they can use it just as punctuation. So here's how an East Ender might use it.
That's enough, innit?
That's enough, innit? So here's from the book. In it grew far beyond its original meaning. I consulted an online urban dictionary, which gave a helpful example of modern use. Me was meeting up with me mates in it, and we was going down the pub in it, when this bloke, comes over and said, like, give me your wallets before I slice you like a tin of beans. And I was like, in it. So it's out there. A bit of a pratfall, I suppose, for Americans, a bed bath. So a bed bath is a wash that you'd give to an invalid, somebody who can't leave their bed. So years ago, I'm about to be married, and we're driving around Peoria, where I live, and my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, both Brits, they see the sign, and they said, oh, that's a bit naughty. And I had no idea what they're talking about. It's this, Bed Bath and Beyond is how they interpreted this. But so in their language, they really, really needed a comma. That was important. Kind of like the old book, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. Eat, shoots, and leaves. Yeah, bed, bath, and beyond. So there we go. Well, we have to leave it somewhere because there's a million isms, but that's certainly the highlight reel. I have some things to tell you, though. I say ta, and I certainly will take questions. If you think of any that you'd like to drop in the chat, by all means, feel free. So things to know. If you would like updates on what's happening, if the book sounds intriguing, you can go to my website, teawithclaire, CLAIRE.com. And you can usually find, I say usually, if it's updated, links to all sorts there. There's my email, I do Facebook from there, a little bit of Instagram from there. Right now, that book is in paperback and ebook format on presale. And it drops, that is, it will become released on the last day of this month, the 31st. And I'm doing the audiobook. I've been told I should narrate, so here we are. You can get what's available, paperback and ebook now, in pre-sale on all sorts of places. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop, or any independent bookstore can order it for you. Just make sure you use Claire Craig Evans as the author because of, I'm not the pig child author and many other books authored by Claire Evans. So it's getting good reviews. I will plug it that way. But I do want to warn you, I suspect you might be into travel if you've tuned in to this evening. And not very long ago at all, in the last couple of weeks, the New York Times reported that Amazon is being flooded by travel books generated with AI. And they are written by imaginary people with made up really interesting credentials and supported by completely fake reviews. So just as a tell about the Guide to Paris, one reviewer said how relieved she was to know that a Parisian's native language was English. That was in the AI book. So that kind of reminded me of the old movie Notting Hill with Hugh Grant. He owns a travel bookshop in that movie, and Hugh Grant's character recommends a travel book on Turkey to Julia Roberts' character. And his line to her was, I think the man who wrote it has actually been to Turkey, which helps. Yes, it does help. So be forewarned, accept no substitutes. If you're reading a travel book, make sure the person's actually been there or spent years of their life there. So I will come back to you and I'll see first if we might have had any questions as we went along. I did reserve a little bit of time to read but a snippet, but I don't want to neglect the questioners. Will I give you the lowdown on high tea, says Diane. Certainly, I will. This is a common misconception people, Americans have. What is high tea? High tea is not fancy tea. So a lot of Americans think it's the pinkies up. We're going to drink in these beautiful venues. That is afternoon tea. So the difference. High tea is an expression that the Brits use for dinner. It got used originally to denote the table that you're eating at. A high table was more of a worker's dinner after they came home. That's more meaty. It's got, tea in it, yes, but meats and breads and that sort of thing. So that just because it says high in it does not mean classy, as in high class. It's that's the wrong interpretation. So afternoon tea is that tea. Let me think. Carrie asks, are you working this travelers to the UK to help them create an itinerary? I have been known to do that. Yes, people tell me what they're interested in, and I recommend based on what I saw and I think you might enjoy. So yeah, you can certainly get to me through my website if you're interested in that. Let me think, anybody else? No, I'm not seeing anything right now. So I have been told that, well, I know for a fact that a certain librarian in this talk, DB, shall we say, has read my book. There it is. And she has suggested, oops, it got green there, so we'll go this way, that perhaps you might enjoy a particular passage. So I will read you out my experience once I got my driving test out of the way, which is an incredibly bad ordeal. And I write about that extensively. And my driving tutor, who goes by the name Valerie, because I say I protect the guilty in this book. This is when I'm putting together the nuts and bolts of actually needing to drive. Unlike US car insurance, UK car insurance followed an owner, not a vehicle. Only Ben and I were insured to drive my car, and even that was a miracle. Instead of using agents, there are myriad insurers that operate by phone and website, as well as comparison websites that help shoppers find the best deals. One website began by asking my age, how long I'd had a license, what kind of car I drove, and other standard fare. I was stopped short when it asked me what Ben and I did for a living. It wanted me to select our job titles from a list of thousands of occupations it officially recognized. Just the day before, I noted a black CCTV camera staring down at me while I waited to cross a street. Another camera surveilled me from 100 feet away. CCTV abounded in the UK. The council, local government, knew every move I made already. So this website riled my libertarian streak. American insurance didn't care what I did for a living. In the words of the locals, sod them. Would they want to know my bra size too? I selected the letter C and I clicked the first job title that appealed to me. Our quote was horrendously expensive. Surely something had gone wrong. I gave up in disgust. That evening after work, I told Ben how invasive I found the line of vocational questioning. But Claire, that's a standard question here. So what did you put? I paused, knowing I was giving him material for the next decade. Clown. His cheeks puffed out. You're joking. I said you were one too. No, at least you didn't give them our address. I did. It was a required field to get a quote. It was really expensive. His face fell. Of course it was. Clowns are high risk. Now we're going to start getting junk mail from every clown vocational group known to man. I can't believe you did that. He stalked off, probably to look for tape to seal the mail slot shut. I was unaware that clown vocational groups were prospecting via Royal Mail. I suppose stuffing as many coworkers as possible in a car was a high-risk way to drive. So, in other words, lots learned the hard way. I see Don is back.
Clown story. I love it.
Yes, I did it. I confess. I confess to a lot, actually. I'm surprised I confessed to so much. So,
well, we're all very proud of that. Just have to get it out there, Claire.
I suppose. That's right.
There's a comment here. Let's see. At the beginning, you said something about moving there again, but there was a story.
I'm not sure what she means by that, but I think in times future, like if we project into retirement, I think we could easily go live there again. And but there's some lessons learned detailed in the book about how I have certain non-negotiables about living there in far more detail. I can't live there in winter. And that's because of depression, seasonal affective disorder. They lose their sunlight. So, yikes.
I was looking, I looked something up when I was reading the book. And I can't remember the name of it, but you commented about the roundabouts. And here, of course, in the Midwest, as you know, roundabouts are a thing. We have 2 new ones close to the library, which have been just reviled in the press. People really have had difficulty with this. In any case, you named a particular one, and I looked it up on Google. And of course, here's this massive roundabout that had 5 roundabouts connected to it.
Yes, they call that the Magic Roundabout. That's in a town called Swindon, Swine, as in Swindon. That is perplexing. And it is 5 in 1. But a lot of people, drivers there, think that it forms a shape of a pentagram, which is not, it is kind of wicked that way. But apparently there are ways that you can cut across it if you know what you're doing. I've been through it once. I did not drive through it. Ben did. And the whole time I'm like this, like, are we going to get out of the Magic Roundabout? But gosh, yeah, it's just like 5 pinwheels circling at once, all in the wrong direction. Brits get really mad when you say they drive on the wrong side of the road too.
Really?
So, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was agog when you talked about learning to drive and how not only did you have the left side of the road, but you had sit on the left side of the car, and then you had to use your shifting mechanism with your left hand. I was done there.
Yeah, in a normal car, yes, I have to think that through because it's been a while back now. Yeah, so you're sitting in what we would think is the passenger seat, and the reason I had to shift is that even though I owned an automatic that I dearly loved, my Mercedes A-Class / Dustbuster car that I motored all over that country in, it turned out that if Ben prefers a manual transmission, and they're far more common in the UK, and if you don't take your driving test in a car that has the same transmission as you drive, so for example, if I took my test in an automatic, but I want to drive a manual, I'm not qualified. I'd have to have taken the test in a manual transmission to be able to drive my own car because I was on the title of that car. And I thought, that's galling. I don't want to be banned from a vehicle that I technically own. So that's why I opted to not hit the easy button. And I learned it in a manual transmission, which I already drove here in the States. But it turned out my dad taught me like big rig trucker habits that I didn't know weren't really kosher there. So that was a whole other, yeah, I described Valerie as a Dominican nun. That's absolutely true. She was taking no prisoners. Book. Oh, yeah. Geez. Well, that's a nail biter for sure. So
we have another comment. So do you educate the Brits on American slang?
Oh, sometimes, if they're going to step in it, or they did, the Brits have this nice little phrase to have a quiet word. It's very British, you don't call somebody out, you just have a quiet word. And you might, by the way, that doesn't mean what you think it means. Usually that's in the realm of obscene. So I probably can't get into a lot of that right now, but I was just thinking, yeah, there are a few times that things aren't. Usually, though, it goes the other way. That there's one in particular that I ruled out. Now you're going to have to research it. I don't think I even put it in the book, but it's usually a female can be described as spunky here in the U.S. So like a facet of her personality. Look that up. Oh, that's highly problematic.
Well, everyone's reaching for their phones.
Exactly. Now, like you said, we just have to have a dull moment here. I play my quiz show music while you look that one up too. So,
well, I know we're all looking forward to your book and its publication date on August 31st. However, why don't you tell us about the next new book?
Okay. Well, once upon a time, many years and moons ago, on a challenge. I wrote a novel. This is women's fiction, but if you read this book, you will get a good flavor for, well, frankly, if you see me talk, I think I speak how I write. And I write in patterns. So even though it's women's fiction, the tone is quite similar to what I do. And it is romantic comedy. And I thought, oh, it's about a Brit, go figure, but he's a baddie in this one. And I had been to places where I incorporated, let's have them go here or there, American heroine. Well, I sent it off to Amazon on a bet to myself as a New Year's resolution back 10 plus years ago. They were having something called the Breakthrough Novel Competition. And the short stories, I kept advancing. And I was expecting this to be a automated email, thanks, but no thanks. And I got to the top 5 in romance and I let it sit. I didn't do anything with it. So after I had been asked for a number of years now, have I written a book? And I always want to say, yeah, it's sitting back there, on the shelf. So now the wheels are in motion. I'm going to bring that one out next year. That one's called Under Your Charms. So there you have it. There might be more in the offing too, but at least for right now, I think I've got what I can handle going. So hopefully.
Well, that's just wonderful, Claire. Don't give up speaking, however. We really like these presentations, so we have to keep that in too.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is I started these gigs because I had a 3-year-old and I wanted to speak in more fully formed sentences. And she has since grown up to be way more of a conversationalist. And for that, I'm grateful. But no, I'm hooked. I enjoy them too.
Excellent. Well, I think we're wrapped here. So we will thank everyone for attending. Again, the reminder to please complete the survey. And Claire, I guess I'll turn it back over to you for a few closing comments.
Oh, gosh, pressure. I always forget, but Donna likes to do this. So this is the book I wish I had read but before I had moved to the UK. It's a little of everything. And you'll find out for sure whether the advice that I got to bring a lifetime supply of taco seasoning was well taken or not. History. So.
Very good. Again, thank you to everyone. And for now, I'll say good night. Good night.
Good night.